Now, the next thing I wrote, Jesus speaks to all believers. The message is plural. Churches in verse 7, not just the saints at Ephesus, but to all the saints in every church throughout the ages. And Jesus sees us not as we are, but as we will be. You understand that? In fact, when I did my mentorship in this wonderful church in California, the pastor, I always remember what he told me. I said, how have you made it? He just passed 50 years in that church. But I was there when he had only been there 30 or 20 years. And I said, how have you made it so long in this church? He says, I'm taking where the Lord has taught me, that I see people not as they are, but as they will be. He said, I see them struggling, but I know they will be perfected in Christ, so I have patience with them. Well, look at this. Jesus sees us as we will be. We are overcomers to him. He sees that remember what Philippians 1:6 says? That he that began a good work is going to bring it to completion. He will finish it. And Peter said, we're kept by the power of God. Well, the secret to a powerful life is simple. Love God most. Now, before we go, I want to ask you a question. What can God do with this Ephesian first love kind of person? When I was your age, I signed up to go on a missions team. I had been writing letters to this guy that I read his book. His name was Brother Andrew, and his book was God's Smuggler. And P.O. Box 47, Ermelo, Holland, was his address. And I used to write him letters, and he'd write back. And finally, he invited me to go on a team, smuggling Bibles. So I was in college in the 70s, and I said, I want to go. And long story short, I couldn't get a visa to Bulgaria where I was supposed to meet him, so I went with another mission, and we went everywhere else but Bulgaria. And one of the places we went was here. And in the 60s, 1960s, a Christian ministry called Transworld Radio started broadcasting the Bible into Muslim countries. Actually, they started before, but they really heavily hit it in the 60s. And they started keeping track of every Muslim that wrote back and wanted a Bible or a gospel message. And then they went and recruited teams like us. I was a college kid who were not married, who if we got caught and went to jail, it wouldn't harm a lot of people, just us. And they asked us if we would drive vans of Bibles into Muslim countries and deliver them to all these people that wanted to know about Christ. Because you couldn't mail a Bible, because the Islamic Society opens outside mail to make sure there's no heretical literature in there like a Bible. Have a good break, and I'll finish that soon. Okay, real quickly, when I was your age, I went on a team. Transworld Radio got all these names. They actually got 6,000 Muslims that wrote to Monte Carlo in Europe, that's down there on the sea coast of France, and said, I want a Bible, I want to know about Christ. And so they took 6,000 Arabic translation Bibles, wrapped them in brown paper, put a track inside of them, hired someone who could write in Arabic script and wrote the person's name and address on the outside of the paper, and they put all of those 6,000 Bibles into grocery bags, kind of like the brown paper ones that we used to get from the grocery store, and they stacked them in a trailer, and they asked me if I would be the driver, and if I would drive 6,000 kilometers from Germany all the way down, through Switzerland, France, down the Costa del Sol of Spain, down to Gibraltar, cross over the ferry to Morocco, and Morocco was the furthest, westward of the Muslim countries, and mail them, 3,000 of them, inside Morocco to all the other Muslim countries, and hand deliver 3,000 of them to that man. In 1978, when this happened, there was only 6 known Christians in Morocco. He was one of the 6. And he was a friend through the mail and other ways with the people at Transworld Radio. He wrote to them and he said, if you will get these Bibles, I will deliver 3,000 of them myself. If you mail the 3,000 that are outside of North Africa, I will deliver the 3,000 inside North Africa. He said, but you have to be very cautious. There are only 6 Christians in my country, and if they find me, that's it. All the Bibles will be gone. So I said, okay, I'll drive the van with the team. And there were 8 of us. So I was the driver, 7 others in the van, big trailer full of Bibles. We drove up to the border of Morocco, By the way, the whole trip was terrible. Everyone got sick except for me. They all got the flu or something, and I didn't get sick, and I just kept driving, and we would have to keep stopping, and people, you know what you do when you have the flu, and it was really, and it smelled in the van. It was just terrible. I really think that was spiritual warfare. And everyone started getting upset at each other in the van, and it was sad. And so we got there, and I said, you know what, we need to pray, because we can't cross this border until we're ready. So we prayed, went to a mission station. We had a great time. Everyone got better. And everyone apologized, and it was nice. And we were all acting like Christians again. So we got up to the border, and there were 6 cars in front of me going into Morocco after we got off the ferry. And as the driver, you know, I was paying attention. The car at the very front, everyone was out of the car. The trunk was open. The hood was open. All 4 doors were open. The soldiers were going in, and they were unscrewing the seats. And they took the seats out of inside the car. And then they took the carpet, you know, the floor coverings out. And I saw one of them bring a long, kind of flexible metal thing, and they opened the gas hole, you know, the gas tank hole, and they were fishing that long metal thing down there, feeling if anything was hidden in the gas tank. Others of them got on these things that mechanics use, and they rolled underneath cars with flashlights, and they were looking underneath them to see if they were smuggling. They were looking for smuggled goods. So about a half hour went by, and they took that car apart, they put it back together, and they left. And the next car, everyone got out, they got in, they started unbolting, and that one took 45 minutes. Well, all the others, you know, they're sleeping. You know what kids do in cars. They're sleeping, and they're playing their guitars in the back in the van and everything. And I'm driving, and I'm starting to sweat because we didn't hide the Bibles. They were in paper bags in the trailer. And every Bible, all 6,000 of them, had a Muslim person's name and address and their country. And I just had what was going on 2 to 3 hours of edging forward, and you know, I'd start and we'd drive forward the next car length, and I'd turn it off, and they started taking that car apart. So, you know, I was just getting this dread. I thought, I'm going to lead the team that's going to compromise 6,000 people that aren't even saved yet. They want to know about Christ, and they're all going to be rounded up by the Muslim government because their name was on a Bible from Europe, you know, and oh. And so one more car in front of me, and I alerted everybody in the back. I said, you guys, is anybody looking what they're doing to the cars in front of us? And finally, everybody woke up in the car, and the other 7 got sweaty. And they realized if they caught us, we were smugglers, and we would all go to Moroccan jail and just watch a movie, and you'll see what that's like, you know. And so we got up, and I had watched the drill long enough. I had all 8 of our passports in my hand because I saw everybody the driver would pop out with the passports in his hand, and all of them were getting ready to get out. And so I, you know, up, and the soldiers, and they all had guns, you know, and they were wearing, now Moroccan soldiers wear those French Foreign Legion kind of outfits. They're really sharp, the outfits, but they had these really big guns. Made us stop. I turned the car off. I had the 8 passports, and I reached to open the car door, and I went like this, and I went, and my door was stuck. And I thought, oh no, they'll think I'm, you know, trying to resist inspection. And so I'm pushing on the door, holding the passports, pushing on the door, and finally, I looked out the window. The soldier had his knee against my door, and he was pushing. As hard as I was pushing, he was pushing back at me, and he was looking, just staring right there. There was a clock, just like you have on the wall. Only his clock, the second hand was going around like this, and it was going to noon. And so I pushed, and he pushed. And finally, the second hand hit noon, and this loud sound, like a siren, and the soldier went like this, and all the soldiers marched off. It was the changing of the guard for the border. And a door opened. He didn't even look at me. He did not want to preside over not only searching a car, but a trailer, because it took almost an hour for the car part. and he would have done 2 hours, and he wanted to go to lunch. His shift was over. And so he had held me until it was noon. So I opened my door, and I stepped out with my pack of passports. Next soldier came up, and he looked at how long the car was, and he looked at the soldier that hadn't done it, and he looked at our passports, and the only word I heard him say, Americans. And he handed them back to me and said, we didn't even get out of the car. I got out of the car. No one else got out of the car. So instantly we realized something was happening with our little trip. And what we found out is, and I could go on and on about this because it was one of the more kind of clarifying moments in my life, the power of people that really love the Lord more than their own life. This guy in Fez, that's a town that this man lived in, had risked his life to receive the 3,000 Bibles. And he had risked his life to be receiving the smuggled goods. He loved the Lord more than anything. And so he knew we were coming. They had gotten a message to him that in this period of time, this group was coming. And so we finally got to, by the way, they wouldn't give us his address because they didn't want us, if we were captured and imprisoned and they did something to us, to tell where he lived. So all they told us is he lived in Fez. Great, 300,000 people live in Fez. And so we had driven around the town looking, and what was interesting was I was driving and I hear someone in the back and say, you know what, I know for sure we're supposed to go that way. And I would drive that way until I said, now, is it right or left? And someone else would say, I'm sure we should go this way. I go, really, you're sure? Okay, and I start driving that way. One by one, everyone in the car abnormally just felt, and I mean, this was not a charismatic group. And it was funny for me, but I was driving, and what I was noticing was we were getting into the center of Fez. If you've ever been to any of these cities, they have an old city that's very narrow, very ancient, closed in. The buildings finally shut out the sun, and there are donkeys, and I mean, it's just like a Middle Eastern city. And so here we are driving, and I said, the last one had told me to make this turn, and I said, we are going right into the souk. This is the very center of Fez. I said, I won't be able to back up. I said, I'm stopping right here. And I just stopped because I couldn't back that great big van up with that trailer down the alley. And I said, I'm going to just stop here and let's pray. And as we bowed our heads, the call to prayer. I looked up. I had parked in front of the mosque, the central mosque of Fez. Gigantic. As soon as the call to prayer, hundreds, maybe more, of people started streaming into the mosque. And they're all wearing that complete outfit, the burqa, the black outfit and everything, streaming around. They were crawling over the trailer hitch. They would crawl between the van and the trailer, around the front, around the back. Everyone went in. It was just like, wow. We watched that for about a minute. I said, let's still pray, because I said, I have no idea what we're supposed to do, and I'm going to back up, because we're stuck. So we all prayed, and as we were praying, on my window, and the biggest smile you ever saw was right there, looking through the glass at me with big smile and white teeth, going, an Arabic man, a Moroccan man, him. And what had happened was, he said, I was on my knees. I live on the 3rd floor right there. And he said, I was saying, Lord, I realize if these people are ever going to deliver the Bibles, they'll have to come during the call to prayer, because that's the only thing that empties the whole city. It's a very observant city. So they all go in there. And he said, I am going to be on my knees praying. And he said, Lord, if you get them into town, would you work it out so that I can find them during the call to prayer? And he said, I was on my knees, and he said, I looked out the window, and I saw a gigantic European van and a gigantic European trailer, and I thought, that has to be them. And he ran down, and he said, we have 12 minutes until they're out. And we carried those 6,000, all 8 of us were just running up and down the flights of stairs, and we Actually, we only delivered 3,000 of them because he told us what to do with the other 3,000. And we spent the next 2 weeks driving all the way around the city, or the country of Morocco, and mailing in every post office box we could find, because they don't censor or search inter Dar Islam, inside of Islam. They don't search the mail. And so we just bought gazillions of stamps, and we were mailing those other 1,500 Bibles in every post office box and spent 2 weeks driving all over. If you ever want to know anything about Morocco, I've seen every road. And as we left, that man was, I'll never forget, waving to us. And it happened so fast in 12 minutes that it took me a while to realize God took a man who was willing to risk everything, love Christ more than his life, willing to kneel before the Lord and say, Lord, I don't know what to do. You'll have to do it all. I want to serve you and my people and get the gospel to them. And the Lord orchestrated for 8 college kids to get scared out of their lives, to drive all the way to northern Africa to see a miracle. So let me just say this. What can God do with an Ephesian first love surrendered life? I don't know. I've seen one example. But that's God's plan for his church, that all of us be willing to do and be and obey what he wants for us to do. So that was last hour.